Well, hello, Forest Meadow, and welcome back to another episode of our Sermon Reflections. And for those of you who joined us on Sunday, you know that we spent the majority of our time talking about how these apostles they are now imprisoned once again for continuing to proclaim who Jesus is. And it's just beautiful. We didn't spend any really time talking about this on Sunday, but I just find it such a beautiful passage because they went out, they were simply obedient, they got thrown in jail, and what did God do? He goes and he works a miracle, opens them up, and lets them out, and he says, "Hey, go continue to proclaim." And these guys go over there and they said, "Hey, we gave you strict orders not to do this." In Acts chapter 5, verse 27, we gave you strict orders not to do this, and why are you doing it again? And he says, "Because we must obey." And so one of the things that I love, though, about this passage is Gamaliel, right? For many of you who are Bible students, you'll recognize the name Gamaliel and you'll recognize him as one of the mentors, right? The teacher of Paul the Apostle, who ends up becoming an apostle still after this. We'll see this in just within the next few chapters. We'll see what happens with Paul, who is called Saul of Tarsus. But Gamaliel was his teacher, and he's one of the prominent men among the leaders of the whole nation of Israel. And I love that Gamaliel, despite being in the position where he still seems to retain a little bit of humility. We you look here at verse 34, Acts chapter 5, verse 34, and it says, "But a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law, respected by all the people, stood up in the council and gave orders to put the men outside for a short time. And he said, 'Men of Israel, take care what you propose to do with these men, for some time ago.'" And then he goes on to name Theudas and Judas of Galilee and these men who were starting a work that was strictly from mankind. In other words, it was of earth. It wasn't divine. This isn't something God was doing. And he mentions these two guys, and he says, and both of them, as soon as this guy was gone, the crowd dispersed, and it was gone. And he said, but what if we're wrong? What if we actually are the ones who are fighting against God? And I just want us to continue to reflect upon that. Sometimes when I know that I'm right, I'm actually wrong. And that disturbs me. That disturbs me tremendously because I know that I have the capacity to convince myself that I am correct and perhaps somebody else is wrong. It might be a spouse, it might be a child, it might be a parent. I don't know who it is. Might be a neighbor, might be somebody else who's at church, might be a church leader, who knows. Um, it's easy for us to convince ourselves that we're right. And we can agree with ourselves. We agree with all of our own reasoning because we created it. But sometimes we must pause, like Gamaliel did. If we find that there is struggle and tension within our own lives and that we are fighting against something, it may be a good opportunity to pause and stop making the assumption that we're actually fighting the Lord's battles. Because sometimes I have found myself actually fighting against the Lord Himself. And God doesn't always reveal to me what it is that He's doing. But oftentimes, if I pause and say, "Lord, is this you? Am I doing the wrong thing?" Often, when I take a moment to just simply pray over the matter and ask God what it is that I am missing, often the Lord will reveal something very small, sometimes something very big, but He will reveal something that will change my perspective. And then I say, "Lord, am I really fighting against you? Or am I fighting against this other thing, this evil that I perceive, or this situation that I perceive? Maybe it's you who's actually trying to teach me something. Maybe it's you who's trying to humble me." And so we must learn something from Gamaliel here. We must learn something from the text of Scripture that perhaps sometimes when we are actually fighting against something, maybe, just maybe, doesn't mean we are, but maybe we are actually fighting against God. And I want to encourage us just to examine our hearts. You may at the end of the day pray about it and say, "No, I did pray about this." And You know, Mike, I really do think that the tension that I'm facing is a good and righteous one. It's something that I think that God is leading me in. And hey, if God is leading you in that and God is directing your path and you sense that you're fighting a battle that's against the evil one, hey, well, continue on, continue to fight that battle by the strength that God supplies, not by your own human strength, not by your own fleshly strength, but continue to fight it in the strength that God provides with the means that God provides. But it's just simply a call for us as believers to humble ourselves, to make sure that we don't on accident become like the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the priests and the scribes and the lawyers. Let's make sure that we don't do that, at least by asking the question, if to nobody else, if alone with God in prayer. I think that will definitely give us at least the posture of humility and an opportunity for God to correct us if we are on the wrong path. Well, those are some of the things that I'm reflecting on this morning. Let's go ahead and move on to our questions for the week. Our first question is this: of what specifically were the religious leaders jealous? Number 2, why did they not have what they desired? Number 3, why did the religious leaders care so much about whose name the apostles preached and healed? Number 4, during the trial when Pilate wanted to release Jesus, they said that they wanted Barabbas, and they also declared publicly that they were fine with Jesus' blood being on them and on their children. You can see this in Matthew 27, verses 20 through 26. So the question is, why are they so concerned about this now? And what does this reveal? Number 5, why did the apostles not obey the counsel and not keep quiet? And was this an act of rebellion or an act of submission? See Acts 5, verse 20. Number 6, how did Peter respond to the high priest? Number 7, when hearing this response from Peter, how did the council respond, and why did they respond in the way that they did? Number 8, Gamaliel said the other leaders were missing something in their reaction. The question is, what had they failed to consider? And last, number 9, how should I respond when I find myself striving against others, whether they're believers or unbelievers? Well, brothers and sisters, that's about all the time that we have for today, but I want to say thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your desire to dig deeper into the scriptures, and I hope that you're taking the time to actually go through these questions. But other than that, we'll see you guys on Sunday, and I hope you have a great day.